Hello, my name is Caitlin Sievers, and today I'll be talking to you about the imagination and why it is so important in our lives. Now, everyone has some sort of imagination. Some people have a broader and more vivid imagination, and they let their imagination affect their everyday lives, where other people have a very narrow mindset and only dwell on their imagination for about a minute a day. As Christians, it is very important to have a very broad imagination. Why? Because in Colossians 3:2, it says that we should dwell on the things that are above instead of what is on the earth, meaning that we are not limited to what is on the earth. We have a whole different reality besides what is on earth. We have so many new possibilities for our lives. And in Luke 1:37, it says that nothing is impossible with God. So that means that God can do all things. The most impossible thought you have in your head can be made a reality through God. So it is very important to have an imagination as a Christ follower. However, this argument would be invalid to someone who is not a Christ follower. But that does not mean the imagination is not an important role for any lifestyle. In fact, that is very untrue. It is important for all lifestyles. One thing that it improves in any lifestyle is that it can improve physical health. And that the imagination can affect the control of vasodilation and vasoconstriction. Vasodilation is pretty much the dilation of blood vessels that decreases, and it causes a decrease of blood pressure. So if someone struggles with high blood pressure, they can go through training called vasodilation training so that their blood pressure can decrease. And vasoconstriction is pretty much the opposite, where the constriction of blood vessels and it increases the blood pressure. So if someone struggles with low blood pressure, they can go through training called vasoconstriction training, and they can increase their blood pressure. A study done by Grace in 2017 says that the more vivid the imagination during the sessions of the vasodilation and vasoconstriction training, the better the results came from those trainings. Pretty much, the vividness of imagination showed an influence on the session's performances, meaning that if they imagine themselves succeeding in this training, they reaped better results from each session. So if someone struggles with either low or high blood pressure, it's important to have a very broad imagination so that they can reap better results from it. Another thing that imagination improves is mental health. A Danish philosopher in the 19th century named Søren Kierkegaard did a lot of research on the topic of imagination. And one thing he came down to is that the imagination is a reflection of oneself. Pretty much what that means is that imagination is when we look at ourselves and we imagine something better for us. If we see something we do not like about ourselves, we can imagine something changing in the future. And like, for example, if someone is in a depressive state and that they look at themselves and they say, I don't want to be depressed anymore, and they imagine themselves not being depressed, that vision of them not being depressed will spur them on and give them the initiative to become better. And they'll find a way to get to that state, and they'll look back on it and realize, wow, if I didn't have that thought back then and not that inspiration and that imagination of getting better, I probably wouldn't be in the state I am today. So that means the imagination can help people change who they are and give them the initiative to do great things. Now, another thing that the imagination improves is scientific research. Back in the 17th century, it actually was thought that science was killing arts and poetry. Now, I can understand why people would think that, because art and poetry are pretty much the display of truth, beauty, and goodness in the spiritual and mental realm, where science is truth, beauty, and goodness in the physical realm. So I can see why those two would clash. So the imagination was actually considered the opposite of science. But that idea was abandoned quickly, and From a research done by Calandra in 2021, it is shown that the imagination is an important role in science, especially in the important role in research. People can furnish unprecedented points of view about the way of conducting experiments, meaning that they can look at experiments that they probably did 1,000 times before, and they can change one little thing about it and then try to figure out what will happen about it and imagine what will change about it. And they'll see if they were right or wrong, coming up with new hypotheses. And of course, this is not just limited to just one sphere of science. This is for all spheres of science. It could be natural science, marine science, physical science, chemical science. Any sort of science can use the imagination, and they can bring new ideas to the table and bring new inspiration, and they can change the world. And they have changed the world with the use of imagination. So in conclusion, having a strong imagination is an important role, not just as a Christ follower, but for any lifestyle on this world. It can improve the conditions for someone who struggles with low and high blood pressure. It can cause the way we look at ourselves and change the states that we're in. And it can improve scientific research and help us bring new ideas to the table and create new things to do new things on this earth. And for Christ followers, it is important to have a broad imagination, and it is our duty to believe in the impossible and believe the different possibilities God can bring us in the way his kingdom will come. Therefore, instead of ignoring the ability to imagine the impossible, use it, dwell on it,